I've used MDPV, that was the first one I used, and then Methadone. I've used Slush, Eric, NRG. I used NRG before Slush and Eric. And I've done 2CB and 2CI, but not when they were legal. And I've done a couple of others that I can't remember the name of. Well, when I used to sniff them at first, which I only did with the MDPV, it was just the same as any other stimulant, like speed or coke, a little bit more intense, and it lasted a hell of a lot longer, and obviously it was so much cheaper, so I could do more. But once I started injecting them, with all of them, it was just the rush that you got once you injected it. Like within 7 seconds, it was uncontrollable, like a roller coaster ride. You're like, and yeah, it's just a rush. It lasts for about 2 or 3 minutes, just coming up and up, and you feel like uncontrollable, like it's too much almost, and that's so addictive, that feeling. I can't imagine anything more intense than that. Well, after that initial rush, you have sort of stimulant-like effects for like hours afterwards. I mean, you'll be quite paranoid, maybe like even like psychosis sort of symptoms, talking to people that aren't there, scratching yourself, getting weird ideas about police following you and things every time you see someone with like headphones in their ear. And then even a day after you've took them, even though you're not really on the effects of the drugs anymore, all the paranoid effects, all the hallucinations, things like that, increase so much more. I think because you haven't been asleep. You normally won't go to sleep for up to 3 days after taking illegal highs. So after that first day, when you haven't taken anymore, yeah, headaches, like blurred vision, and this can go on for like 2 or 3 days, just slowly getting in more and more of a daze, like. No, I was just so addicted to the rush that you got right after you injected them. I didn't like the feeling of being on the drug after that, like what I suppose you could call the actual effects of the drug, which is what you would have got if you'd sniffed them. I didn't like that. All I liked was the rush you got when you injected them. Everything else about them, the feeling afterwards, the feeling I'd get for weeks after taking them, I hated. But I was just so addicted to that rush, I kept taking more and more. And in fact, the feelings that I got after them, that just made me want to inject more, because I wanted to go back to the rush, like rather than just stopping. Because once I'd stopped taking them, I'd have to wait for a while before the horrible feelings would go away. So it was just so much simpler to inject more. Yeah, I got a lot of infection-related problems. Well, because it's so cheap, the sheer amount of times you inject is crazy. I mean, a heroin addict would inject like 5-6 times a day, like on average, with these legal highs, because it's so cheap. For a tenner's worth of drugs, you can inject like 20-30 times within 1 day. So like all the problems you get with your veins are like magnified. Like I killed like all my veins within like a year of using legal highs. Like the track marks were like so much worse than they'd ever been before, like going all the way up my arm. And I got a lot of infection related problems. I had like a lump of like dead flesh. It's called necrosis, when a part of you like dies. Big just lump of black skin and pus. I know a lot of other people have had problems like that. Someone's in the hospital at the moment having a heart valve transplant. Someone's had septicemia, like a lot of injection related problems. Still got one. It just popped a week ago. It was up for the last 2 years, and I haven't been using legal highs for nearly a year now. It was a big purple lump about that big. But it just popped recently and some hard goo came out. But at the time I was using them, I had loads of these sort of lumps sort of all over my arms and legs. I had a blood clot in my left leg that I had to go to hospital for. They thought I might have had DVT, and if I'd carry on using I eventually would. Because I killed all the veins in my arms, I was going in my feet, and so I had lumps there that was stopping me walking, and then the blood would get caught in there and my leg would swell up. I don't think it's more greedy. I think if you had the money, if I had the money, I would have been just as greedy with the heroin and crack. The difference with heroin and crack, you get £20, you get a hit, you get £20, you get a hit. It's quite hard to do. With the legal highs, you get £20, you've got enough to last you days to keep doing. So you're more greedy because you've got more to be greedy with. Like, I think for someone who's used to doing crack and heroin and likes that feeling, for them to suddenly give them legal highs where they can get the feelings that they'd get from doing crack, but instead of spending £20 they have to spend 20p, then obviously they're going to do more and more and more. They're going to inject like a whole £5 worth of drugs, which is going to be like doing hundreds and hundreds of pounds worth of crack. Like, incredibly greedy. Like, you've just got so much to do, and like, as I said before, once that you start coming down off them, you just want to do more and more and more. So you'll end up injecting every 10 minutes and start doing huge amounts. And as we've seen recently, people have been dying because they just want to do bigger and bigger, bigger and bigger hits to get more of that feeling that they've become addicted to. The main sort of people that use legal highs are sort of students, young people. I mean, there's different social groups that take different drugs. Like, you don't get an alcoholic, heroin addict who lives on the streets going to clubs and taking ease. It just doesn't happen. People that use like legal highs are sort of young people, students, people in like the rave sort of scenes, people that don't generally inject. But then once a few addicts, a community of addicts, like one or two people in a community of addicts who you all inject heroin and crack, once they realise that if you inject these legal highs, it gives you a feeling so much more powerful than the crack or heroin, so much more intense, and for such a cheaper price, then it's going to get around. It's going to get to a couple of other people. I think in other places in England there may be people that have injected legal highs, but because they're sort of in like a sort of student rave scene social group, they don't want to tell their friends that they inject them, and even if they did, their friends wouldn't want to do it. But because in a community of addicts, everyone injects, and it doesn't take long for the information to get around. And I think that's what's happened in Swindon. One or two people found out that you can inject legal highs and get this amazing feeling from it, and so they passed it around, and now it's got so that every member of the injecting community in Swindon knows about injecting legal highs, whether they're doing them or not. And so many people are doing them, and so many people are trying them, and so many people are dying from them.
Do you think this problem is going to spread across the rest of the UK?
I think all it would take is for one person in the injecting community of, say, Bristol, London, to find out, and that's enough for it to spread. That's all it takes, is one person. I mean, I've been in prison with other friends from Swindon, addicts, and they've mentioned to people from addicts from Bristol, oh, do people inject legal highs, like say in Bristol? And they say no. Like, they're like, what are you talking about, legal highs? Like, so, and I think that's one way that it could pass from Swindon to another place, by people meeting up in prison, addicts from one area and from another, and talking about it. They might try it, because these drugs are available all over England. You can buy them on the internet, like, so easily, and there's people that take them in every city, like these students, rave scene, so obviously they're available. They're sold in legal high shops as well. So as we saw in Swindon, the shops that people were buying them from, students and things like that, once the addicts found out that they can inject them, they started swamping the shops, and because they used so much. They weren't just taking them on the weekend to go for a party, they were taking them habitually, injecting them. They were swamping the shops, so the shops started buying more and more and selling more and more and making loads of money. I worked for one of the shops for a while, and once addicts started finding out that they can inject it, this was methadone at the time, the amount the shop was taking in doubled, tripled. Like,